Okay, so we want to learn how to use the .measure command in LTSPICE. So here's a simple circuit. It has an AC source here and a DC source here. We're going to start off without this label. So typically you're going to do simulate, edit simulate command. We're just doing a transient. You see it's a 1K, so we're just going to do a 10 millisecond. Just throw that on the circuit anywhere and run it. So if I look at the voltage right here, you can see that it's oscillating up and down, and you see that the way that you write stuff is V parenthesis and then the node name right there. If I put my cursor over it, I get I, and so it's I parenthesis and then the element that it's going through. So this is the R1. We want to do a voltage, so let's go back to voltage. This is node 1. If I don't want to remember the node, I can come in here and add a label. We're just going to call it out. So I come in here, and then I'm going to wire this over, and then rerun it. And now you see, instead of being V of node 1, it's going to use the label that I put in there right there. Okay, so we could come in here with cursors and we could measure this, but it'd be nice to just have the program measure it ourselves. So we're going to use the .measure command to get like an average or a peak to peak or any of that. So we're going to go over here to help topics, and we're going to do .measure. And there it is right there. We're going to go down and use this variant right here. Okay, so here is what we pulled out of the help. And what we see here is that we basically have this part right here, which says .measure, this part right here, which talks about what type of thing I'm going to do. We're going to put in the name of the variable and then what I'm going to do. Okay, and then the expression. Okay, so let's go through all of this. Okay, so we're going to start with a .measure command. So we're going to come in here and do .measure. Okay, you see right here, we're going to do a transient. So I'm going to write tran. We're going to give it a name. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try and find the peak. So I'm going to go call it V peak. Okay, what do I want to do? So that's this part down here. I could do the average, max, min, the peak to peak value, RMS, or integrate a whole expression. Let's do our peak to peak. So we're going to put in PP for our peak to peak. And then we are going to have the expression right here. So let's do our voltage. So you can kind of see we have the voltage of V out. So we're going to come in here and do V of out. Okay, so that's what our command's going to be. So let's go over to LTSPICE now that we understand all of this. Okay, so we're already running our transient. We have our circuit set up here. So now I want to do a command. So this is called a SPICE directive, which is right here, SPICE directive. And then it gives you a text thing. Now I could set it up as a comment and then it doesn't do anything, or a SPICE directive and it's going to run that. So I'm going to come in here and remember I do a .measure and then a space. I'm doing a transient analysis. I'm going to do volt peak to peak. That's just the variable name that I have. And then what am I going to do? I'm doing a peak to peak, and then I want V of, and I named my node out, so I put out right there. And then I hit OK, put it somewhere here on the screen, and then I run this. Okay, so then if I go to view SPICE error log, there's where it is. So my variable is called v peak to peak, and it's telling me that it's doing the peak to peak of v out, and it's giving me the value that I have here, and it's giving me the range that it's measuring. So it's measuring between 0 and 0.01, and the peak to peak value of that is this right here. Okay. So we can come in here and get fancier if I wanted. So if I right click on this, it pulls up this. For some reason, you have to get canceled to go to this. Let's say I want to do my peak to peak power. So then I'm going to add in my current, and this time I'm going through, you see this element R1. Okay, and then this we're going to call power peak to peak. So we just changed that. Okay, and if you do, right here it says Control M to do another line. You see I could have had my other one. Let's leave my other one in. So my V peak to peak. Looks like that. And now you see, now I have two dot measure commands in there. So we run this and we do view splice error log. So now I have my power peak to peak, which is V out times I of R1, and I also have my V peak to peak. So you see it's just telling me all of these. Okay. Now the other thing is if we wanted to change the time, that's where we're going to get into targets and triggers. Okay, so we don't want it to go from 0 all the way up. Let's say I only want to grab this half because there's some weird transient thing going on at the beginning. So that's called a trigger. So a trigger is telling when the measurement to trigger or start. So here I'm going to add a trig at the end, and I'm going to tell it where to start. So I'm going to say start at, and I'm going to do 5 milliseconds. And then if I run this, view SPICE error log. So now it says from, you see now it's going from 0.05 to 0.01 rather than from 0 like the other one. So in this case, I'm kind of skipping some section for my calculation. And that's how we use the dot measure command.